Check 1, 2. Welcome to the March 21st, 2024 regular meeting of the Transportation Commission. Will the secretary please share the Zoom information?
Sure. The meeting may be accessed via Zoom. The number or the code to access is 821-6351-9958, and the passcode is 459382. The meeting is available through the code 821-6351-9958. That's the meeting room number. And the passcode is 459382.
Okay. At this time, I'll ask our commission secretary if any notifications or requests for virtual meeting participation has been received from any members of the commission.
Yes.
Thank you, Commission Secretary. Commissioner Patch, would you please address the commission?
Hi. Yes, I've requested to call in virtually for just cause because of contagious illness.
Do I have a motion just making sure, hold on. Yep. Can I get a motion from the commission to either approve or deny the request from Commissioner Patch?
I'll move to accept the request for remote participation.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Can the commission secretary please take a roll call vote? The member making the request will not vote.
Commissioner Cagle?
Aye.
Commissioner Creeling?
Aye.
Commissioner Reese?
Aye.
Chair Ash?
Aye.
The motion carries.
The motion has been approved. All votes tonight will be by roll call vote. We'll now move to the next item on the agenda. Would the secretary please call the remainder of the roll?
Okay. Commissioner Cagle?
Present.
Commissioner Creeling?
Present.
Commissioner Patch?
Present.
Commissioner Reese?
Present.
Youth Commissioner Yao?
Present.
Chair Ash?
Present.
We have a quorum.
This public communications, this portion of the meeting is reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the commission cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. At this time, I'll open this item up for public comment. Do we have any members of the public wishing to comment on items not on the agenda?
No, we do not.
Great. If you're in the audience, no, sorry. Okay, consent calendar. Next on, I can't do the, hold on, sorry. I don't think I can do the consent calendar because we have to go to roll call.
We can do roll call, and it should be January.
Sorry, bear with me 1 minute while we make sure we're following proper procedures with our. Okay. Okay, next on the agenda is the adoption of the January 2024 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from the January 20th commission meeting?
I move to approve the minutes from the January 18th commission meeting.
Do I have a second? I can't.
We're going to have to
Sorry, we're going
push
to.
this item until next meeting.
Can I have a motion to table this
We don't have a
meeting,
yeah.
this agenda item?
I'll move to table it to the next meeting. Approval
Do I
of the
have a
minutes.
second on the tabling?
I'll second.
Okay. Do we need a roll call vote on tabling it?
Yeah, it's okay. You don't need to vote on this. We don't have quorum for those who participated to be able to pass these meeting minutes. So they shouldn't be on the agenda. Or
Wait, will we?
you know what? That's okay. Just go ahead and we'll roll call vote it to to move it to the next meeting.
Can I
For
bring up a
approval.
point of order?
Yeah.
Because I serve on some other boards. You may want to just go back and ask for the future, our city attorney. I believe you can approve minutes even if you weren't at the meeting, believe it or not. But I'd ask our city attorney.
Okay. That's okay. It's okay.
Okay. So we have a motion to table it on the agenda. Can we call the roll on that, please, Secretary?
Yeah, who was the second on that? Okay, thank you.
I was the second.
Okay, Commissioner Cagle,
Aye.
Commissioner Creeling,
Aye.
Commissioner Patch,
Aye.
Commissioner Reese,
Aye.
Chair Ash.
Aye.
Okay.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda is an item for commission consideration, the election of a new chair and vice chair. At this time, I will open this item up for public comment. Do we have any members of the public wishing to provide public comment about the election of chair and vice chair? Okay. I think you have to read that. We have no members of the public wanting to provide comments on this particular agenda item. So if you're, okay. So we're going to go to take nominations. We're going to skip ahead on the agenda. Go ahead and make the chair.
I would like to move to nominate Commissioner Reese as chair, if he is so inclined. I realize it's a jump.
Yeah, it's quite a jump.
And if you're not comfortable with it, please, feel free to
I'm
let us know.
comfortable with it. Thanks.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Can the secretary please call the roll on the vote of chair only at the moment?
Commissioner Cagle,
Aye.
Commissioner Creeling,
Aye.
Commissioner Patch,
Aye.
Commissioner Reese.
Do I abstain?
No, it's okay. It's
I can say aye.
Chair Ash.
Aye.
Okay.
Congratulations. I just have to hit it again. Sorry, folks. All right. You take,
Yes.
you get to read here. Give us 1 minute as we transition. You get to read, though. You take over, here's the vice chair. Do I have a motion for vice chair? You read all the greens.
Okay. Great. As chair, do I have a motion for the election of a new vice chair?
I'd like to motion that Samantha Cagle be our next vice chair.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Can the secretary call?
Would the secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Ash,
Aye.
Commissioner Cagle,
Aye.
Commissioner Creeling,
Aye.
Commissioner Patch,
Aye.
Chair Reese.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next on the agenda is an item for commission consideration, the local road safety plan, spring 2024 update. At this time, I invite staff to provide their presentation.
Okay. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Brianna Byrne, and I'm an associate traffic engineer here at the City of Walnut Creek. Tonight, this is just a presentation to provide you an update on our local roadway safety plan. We last came to you all in 2023, summer, right before taking this to City Council for approval. So an overview of this presentation, we're going to go over pretty much what happened, the adoption, the city's goal, and then the work that traffic engineering has done since this plan was adopted, and then what we're looking to do as part of the next steps. Before we kind of kick off that, I want to do a high level of the shift in traffic engineering. So it's called the safe system approach. And we kind of have just a quick overview where traditionally, if anything were to happen, bad drivers were to blame. So the shift is we are designing for human mistakes. We used to react based on crash history at, say, a single location. We're now moving towards proactively identifying and addressing those risks before something could happen. And before, where we were trying to prevent all crashes, we are now moving towards preventing fatal and serious injuries. So what this is really leaving out is the property damage only. So side swipes, rear ends, we're focusing more on the serious injuries. And all of this goes along with vehicle speeds should be context appropriate. So the adopted plan and resolution, August 2023, City Council adopted the plan and a resolution stating that we had the goal to eliminate fatal and serious injury collisions by 2034. This is in line with our county and other nearby jurisdictions. The resolution also established that we'd create a standing working group to monitor progress towards this goal, and then the commitment to institutionalize safety practices. So the updates since that plan was adopted and we talked to you all last, we applied for what's called the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, SS4A for short. We applied and were awarded $240,000 to make this plan into an action plan. So really the LRSP was a foundation identifying traffic safety issues in the city, and this action plan moving forward would establish these actionable goals and timeline in order to reach the 2034. It would help us create a prioritization process and the criteria that would go along with that, and then assess our current policies. As part of that grant, we also requested some funds for a traffic safety outreach campaign and a 2-year pilot demonstration where we'd be doing before and after data collection. Another update was we created this Vision Zero dashboard. It is housed on our local roadway safety webpage. And it's a visual representation of the data that the plan holds. So it's another way that we're getting this out to the public. So we overlaid the crash data from that plan along with the capital projects and daily maintenance that our staff did and has been doing along that timeline as well. So it really overlaps those two to create a full story. So institutionalizing safety, traffic engineering was doing this beforehand. So really this is kind of just an update of since that plan was adopted. So looking at our capital investment program, CIP for short, this includes our unsignalized crosswalks, which will be one of our presentations tonight. We have our annual pavement maintenance project. This year, that's in the Livorno Estates area. So as part of that pavement project, we're looking for neighborhood traffic calming solutions, and we'll be doing a pop-up demonstration over the next couple of weeks to kind of explore our options there. And then also coming up this year is we have the Wiggett Lane protected bikeway. This is an extension of the existing Lennon Lane bikeway. We have our speed cushion pilot, which is another presentation tonight. We've done traffic safety improvements in your schools, and this was right before this previous school year started. We installed systemically those paddle signs that you see in the roadway, as well as installed leading pedestrian intervals, which is where the pedestrians get to go before the vehicles, wherever there is a signal near a school. Traffic signal timing. Yeah, so near schools and also busy pedestrian areas. So during the downtown big peak shopping, we rolled that out. So where feasible, we have that leading pedestrian interval installed. We also have an upcoming downtown curbside management plan. This is in the scope development phase, but we've made sure that one of the requirements to any recommendations is that it has to fall in line with our local roadway safety plan. We've incorporated it into development review. And the last one here is this new daylighting law, AB 413. And what this states is vehicles cannot park within 20 feet of a crosswalk. Enforcement starts in 2025, so at the staff level, we've been identifying locations where we need to red curb and emphasize this new restriction. And then we have AB 43. So this is the new speed limit law. AB 43 gives staff additional allowances in determining speed limits. We still have to follow a process, and we've presented to commission in the past, and I've noted the previous meetings for anyone who is interested. But this new bill allows for staff to reduce posted speed limits to a context-appropriate speed. So we're working on getting that scope and a consultant on that work right now. So moving on to next steps, we're going to move forward with executing the supplemental planning grant. It is a federal grant, so right now we're still working on completing the contract and funding agreements. And then the last one that we're doing next steps on is establishing this core working group. Currently, as envisioned, given the technical knowledge and the background required, we're thinking this would be primarily city staff, public works, our maintenance, and our engineering division, along with police department. That would be the core working group, and then from there we would reach out to other stakeholders and disseminate the information from there. One feedback that we received as part of the LRSP development was that there is a strong public interest in traffic safety. And so we're envisioning that the Transportation Commission meeting would really be that conduit for the public and staff in this core working group to pass information back and forth. And with that, we are looking for commissioners' input kind of on that working group strategy. Like I said, these are the next steps, so it's something we're moving towards. And with that, I'll open it up for questions or comments.
At this time, I'll open this item up for public comment. Do we have any members of the public wishing to provide?
Go ahead and ask. First, you should take questions from the commissioners. It's not on there. That's an error on my part, so
Okay.
apologies.
Are there any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Ash?
For the law adjusting the crosswalk parking to the 20 feet, how many, and you might not know this yet, so I realize it still has to probably be studied. How many spots do we lose, and is there going to be an analysis or report on that?
So for the whole city, we don't know. So we did look at the downtown area because of metered parking spaces, and there's, the revenue from the meter feeds into so many things, and so we did look at what the potential loss was for that, and it was just one space. A lot of our downtown is already built out to have that safety element.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that too. One of the capital projects that will be occurring beginning in the summer is the Locust Street repaving job. It'll also have some sidewalk work as well. And we were able to save some of the spaces just from restriping on Locust. So overall, the same parking quantity, just slightly different, shifted back.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Yeah. Commissioner Kriegel?
Krelling?
Crowley?
Yeah, thanks. Few questions. I'll start with the signal timing near the schools. I think I heard you say the idea is to grant the pedestrian access more quickly.
Correct.
So are there considerations given? I think about, there's that school coming down the hill westbound from YVR, and I don't know if it's already set that way, but it seems like that's one of the stopping points on YVR that my perception from watching is perhaps it's already giving preferential, and then do we give some sort of balanced analysis to, if you back up a bunch of cars to give that preference, you get what I call idling pollution. Just a lot of cars sitting there spewing stuff out.
Okay. So I'll address that in part. So yes, we did add the LPI leading pedestrian interval there. And when it comes to the preference, there isn't a preference given to the side streets. YVR is responsive timed. It gets the green time it's allotted, and if there are calls on the side streets, that's when they get the green, and just in the case of that location, there's that much side street traffic.
Okay. Thank you. On the daylight law, does that apply to residential? So if someone's house is there and there's a crosswalk, they lose 20 feet of frontage for parking?
Correct.
Will those get painted red or something like that, or?
So that's part of this rollout, and to add further confusion, it's marked and unmarked crosswalks. So technically, at every single intersection, there is an unmarked crosswalk. So it's going to be a challenge, whether it's education or whether it's installing all red curb. It's going to be likely somewhere in the middle, just because all red curb is additional maintenance that our staff would have to do. But so we're going to be looking at that type of rollout.
Okay, and thank you for bringing up the unmarked intersection as a crosswalk, because I think all of our drivers don't know that, or a lot of our drivers, which I had a question I wrote down. Is there budget for painting crosswalks in some of those unpainted ones that are trouble spots?
So adding marked where there are no marked. So there is guidance to when you should mark a crosswalk. And the guidance is you shouldn't just do it at every single corner. It kind of loses the effect. Crosswalks are about funneling pedestrians to a location that is designed to be, a safer location than, say, up and down the street. But yeah, we do have budget for improving crosswalks. We use it primarily for improving existing marked crosswalks.
Got it. I have one last question.
Yeah.
I promise it's the last one. I've started making my way through the local roadway safety plan, and one of the things it mentions early on is some sort of citizens committee, I think, being formed. Is that this core working group, or is that something separate that has been formed or will be formed?
I think that was likely part of the countermeasures chapter, and that that went over engineering countermeasures. That would possibly be its own separate working group, and kind of maybe this platform, but that citizens committee is separate from this core working group.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
I do. I have a couple. For the unmarked, does that include alleyways?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's the intersection of any public streets.
Okay. I wasn't sure if that includes alleyways or not. Thank you.
I think it includes commercial lane. That's the way we're treating it
Okay.
at least right now.
Interesting. Thank you. And then as far as the working group is concerned, you said you want input from us, and I'm wondering if you've done, and I feel like I've seen examples of this in prior presentations from you, but examples of who should be in this working group. Do you have recommendations for us? Are there other cities maybe that have done similar groups that we could look to make sure that we cover everything?
Yeah, so we've on the staff level done the research, and one thing that's becoming clear is that the cities that have a more publicly laid out are larger cities, so they have more staff to kind of handle multiple groups. So in talking with agencies our size, they're really they're struggling to figure out what this would be, because there is a technical knowledge, but there's a lot of stakeholders that are interested. And so that's why the idea is to keep the core within staff, but the moving outwards, we've talked about, including the school districts. Parks and Recreation was another, I think, recommendation that Commissioner Reese had recommended, was incorporating them as well into this dialogue. But public health officials are another. So it's about, traffic safety. It's about doing it as a team. So we understand that there's a lot of players there.
Yeah. And when do you anticipate that to commence?
I mean, as soon as possible. So it's, once we start it, it's not set in stone. Like, we can continue to mold it and shape it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Questions? Or questions?
I think we're doing questions.
Yeah, questions, right. I have one question regarding, could you share how the LPIs are being rolled out? You had mentioned by schools. How are you doing the rest of the city?
So, and this is really limited by staff availability. So we've been rolling it out we first did the schools. Every school crosswalk or every school intersection, signalized intersection. So these are when they have yellow crosswalks. We implemented LPI there. And then as the holiday season approached, maybe October, November, it was actually probably October when we had kind of the big downtown trick-or-treat boost. That was, again, shifting staff priorities to implementing LPI there. It is something that we could look to do for all the intersections citywide, but the emphasis and the priority for staff time was getting the vulnerable roadway users in the high pedestrian areas.
So LPI is, can you define that for us?
Yeah, so LPI is the leading pedestrian interval, and it's the 3 to 5, 7 seconds where the pedestrians get the walk symbol before that complementary vehicle phase gets the green ball.
Thank you. At this time,
Sorry, can I ask one more question?
sure.
Something else came up as a. So I don't know. I'm back to this crosswalk thing, because I think the unmarked, and so part of it is maybe understanding the state law and the unmarked crosswalks. That fundamentally changes residential streets, right? And people in front of the home. So, like, is that enforcement up to the PD? Like, is that in the state law? Sort of what is typical here in Walnut Creek, maybe?
So the rollout for enforcement is laid out in that state law. So for beginning January 1st, 2024, parking enforcement or, police departments were able to provide warnings, not citations, but warnings to those who are parking within that 20 feet of a crosswalk. They're not actually doing that right now. And that was something that traffic engineering had discussed prior with parking enforcement, because this is something that we want to roll out from an educational perspective to the city as a whole. So we'll be partnering with PD on that education piece. Meanwhile, like public works staff has been prioritizing locations where we might have more issues. So a place like a parking meter where it's a very designated spot, right? We don't want people parking in a parking meter and then getting a ticket because of that daylighting law. That doesn't make sense, right? So those are the locations that we wanted to fix, like nip in the bud, get red curb on, along with some trail crossing locations, some of the other higher use pedestrian crossings, just to make sure that we get those sight lines in place so that drivers can really see those pedestrians, which is the whole point of this law. Right. Then the remaining areas in those residential neighborhoods, that's the question of, okay, this is a lot of red curb that we'd have to put out there. And I mean, I'm going to throw this out there, but you're not allowed to park on a corner where there's a radius. You're not allowed to do that. You're also not allowed to park within 15 feet on either side of a fire hydrant. It's not always red curbed. That's in the California Vehicle Code. And so, and it's hard too, right? Because not everybody remembers these things, and that's totally valid. So there is a balance here of having to go back and maintain all this red curb that we'd have to put in to meet these requirements, and, you know, taking that educational approach. So there's going to be somewhere in between where we're really prioritizing the red curb and then the following maintenance efforts in those locations where the traffic safety component is critical, and that's really going to be those marked crosswalk locations. The remaining locations, you know, that's going to be education dependent, and, you know, we'll work with PD on how that actually rolls out.
Thank you. That was helpful.
At this time, I'll open up this item for public comment. Do we have any members of the public wishing to provide public comment?
Yes, we have one member of the public who wishes to provide comments.
There's actually quite a few. I think we're all going to talk, so.
On this item, on the local roadway safety plan item.
It's on the one for the homestead.
Okay,
Awesome.
that's actually, it's a different item on the agenda, and that's coming up.
Okay.
In a couple, and I think it's the next presentation. So
I'll
thank
wait-
you,
I'll
thank
wait
you
my
so
turn.
much. If it's on this item, yeah. You know, actually, so what I can do is we can actually have you talk to Brianna, you know, outside later, and yeah, she can answer your question or get that comment. Thank you.
For the chair? Okay. At this, at this time, are there any commissioner comments? Commissioner Patch, do you have any comments?
I do not. Thank you for checking in.
Is there
I think I'm good and look forward to the continued work on this. So thank you for the staff report and answering some good questions.
And I'll just say, keep up the great work, obviously. And I'm learning, this is a new topic area for me, so I'm learning as I go along. One of the things I learned is you guys had to do this plan to be able to apply for certain funding, and you've been getting the funding, so obviously you did a great job. So keep up the great work.
Any other comments, Commissioner Yao? No? No? I'm learning too, and you guys, as always, are doing a great job. So I'm excited to see the leading pedestrian intervals get rolled out. It's great to see them around downtown, and it'll be nice to have them elsewhere too. So thank you for that. And next on the agenda is an item for commission consideration, Walnut Boulevard and Homestead speed cushion update. At this time, I invite staff to provide their presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. Good evening. My name is Matt Redmond. I'm Associate Traffic Engineer here. And tonight I'll be providing an update on our Neighborhood Streets program, specifically the speed cushions that we installed in the Homestead community. So tonight's presentation, we'll start off with a little introduction to our Neighborhood Streets program and kind of what that is. And then I'll go into the specific treatments on Homestead for the speed calming that we've performed in the past, including some pop-up demonstrations, and then I'll touch on the speed cushion pilot that's currently active. So the area we're talking about tonight is all south of Ignacio Valley Road on Homestead Avenue, as well as on Walnut Boulevard. You can see a map there of the exact corridor. So the Neighborhood Streets program is a program kicked off in 2019 here at the city. And really, it's taking a focus away from our big arterials and putting it more onto residential streets or neighborhood streets. And so the big item we're going after with those streets is bringing speeds down. Speeds have a direct correlation to fatalities. As you can see here from this graphic, linear increase in speed leads to an exponential increase in fatalities. And so that's what we're trying to combat with this program. And it also helps the quality of life, especially for those pedestrians and cyclists and vulnerable road users also out on the residential streets. So the program started with these two programs. The first is the Pace Car Pledge program, basically a pledge card saying you'll drive the speed limit. It's a pretty simple form there, and you'll get a sticker to display to others and encourage others to join the program. And then we also provide free lawn signs. So you can see here the different designs. You can see the popularity with the slow down sign. And overall to date, we've delivered over 300 signs. So it's been pretty successful. You've probably seen them around. But the goal with these is really to encourage visitors to a street who may not know about it, or to spread awareness that your speed matters wherever you drive. And it's our first point of engagement. And so speaking of engagement, we started engaging the Homestead community back in 2020 or so, when the police department here in Walnut Creek and resident feedback mentioned the speeds on Homestead Avenue and Walnut Boulevard. And so while we heard this data, we wanted to make sure it was true. And so we looked at our radar signs that are installed on those streets, and we were able to determine that the speeds were much higher than the posted speed. And so for that reason, we did increase our neighborhood participation with neighborhood meetings, conducting outreach to fully understand the issue. And so here from these neighborhood meetings, we learned multiple aspects of these streets that, including driver behavior and speeding. So there's lots of different use cases there. And so then we put our heads together and tried to determine what would be some appropriate solutions. And so we're showing temporary kind of quick build solutions here, including traffic circles, bulb outs, narrowing, and speed humps. And this allows for a little bit more cost-effective measures that we can implement a little bit quicker than traditional concrete. And so we took some of those ideas and we actually deployed them. So we partnered with our traffic maintenance crew, and we put some cones out on Homestead to try to provide a narrowing effect. And we learned from that pilot for 2 hours or so. I think staff and the citizens there agreed that it wasn't very effective. And so then on Walnut Boulevard, same day, we deployed a neighborhood traffic circle in one of the larger intersections of the Walnut Boulevard, so that we could understand how that would work. And so we determined, so you can see here the straw wattle kind of creating that effect. And then there's some straw wattle also on the sides, creating kind of a buffer for pedestrians and cyclists and vehicles that maneuver around. And so from this, we determined that there's a little bit more design constraints than we realized, including drainage and the pedestrian walking path there. And then there was additional outreach that's needed for something like this, just due to the nature of the design. And so both of these, while they weren't fully successful in terms of implementation, they did allow us to conduct great outreach. And so we were able to talk to a lot of residents informally and learn about the issues and see it firsthand. And we conducted a survey there on paper so we could collect additional input about what we were trying to do. So from there, we kind of went back to the drawing board and we said, okay, well, if we did something more impactful, what would we want to do? I think I think implementing something more impactful requires additional data. And so if we look at this chart here, a little technical, but on the left side, basically that's like hard verifiable data that you could, print out from a computer. And then you have more hearsay data on the right-hand side. And then if you go down on the graph, that's more instantaneous. So you could think like maybe 1 second of data, or you could go more up on the graph and that would be more continuous. Think maybe 24/7 data collection. And so you can see we have lots of opportunities to collect valuable data, including observations from residents. We have radar signs that collect data. We can also go out and drive it and collect GPS recording data. But you'll notice at that bottom right corner is blank, but that's okay because that's instantaneous and it may not be 100% reliable. So overall, we felt like our landscape of data collection could capture what we needed to do. And so with that, we went forward with exploring the speed cushion option. Now, speed cushions, if you're not familiar, they are a bit more controversial than traditional traffic calming. However, one of the big pros is that they are effective at reducing speeds. And again, that's the whole goal of the Neighborhood Streets program. And then on these streets, we have a pedestrian walking path, not like a formal sidewalk. And so reducing speeds would help improve that pedestrian environment. It would provide that traffic calming we were looking for. And as you can see here tonight, we would also increase engagement, which, positive or negative, I feel like it's a good thing because it provides opportunity for education. Now, there are some downsides to speed cushions, including it can increase emergency response times. There is noise, and it can create diversions. So you could imagine, hey, instead of taking that street, I'll take this other side street, and now you're kind of exacerbating the problem. And they can be comfortable for drivers. However, with all that, we were able to conduct significant outreach, including emails, next door posts, posting on flyers on the street, as well as letters to the individual residents who are facing the street to make sure that we got the word out. And then we sent a map showing the approximate locations of the speed cushions. So we put 5 on Homestead and 6 on Walnut Boulevard for this segment. And we spaced them about 250 to 500 feet according to best practices. So then last month, we began installing. You can see the crews here installing, and we now have some speed cushions out on the street, if you haven't heard already. So I will say that these speed cushions are drilled into the pavement. They are made of rubber. They are 10 feet long. They are textured, so you really have a full effect of slowing down. And the last point I'll mention is that they are temporary. They can be removed. So they're not pavement. They're not designed into the roadway. They are tacked down, and they can be potentially removed at some point. So it's great for a pilot purpose. So I'll provide some feedback on what we've heard so far. It's been both positive and constructive. There's been a lot of thank yous, and I appreciate the residents who've reached out and let me know about that. This isn't an easy project to move forward with, given the impacts that speed cushions have on a wide variety of populations that use the street. Many have waited a long time, and they're excited to see this, and they feel like it's a real improvement. They've seen cars slow down, and they feel safer walking and biking on these streets. And so that's great to hear. Now, there has been constructive replies too. I've heard some people didn't know about it and they don't like the noise. And so for that's one of the side effects, and we tried to get the word out. We also, for this design of speed cushion, it's 10 feet long and it's made out of rubber. So this particular profile encourages more of a 10 mile per hour going over it rather than maybe a faster 15 mile per hour speed cushion. And so that's good feedback to hear. You can always do more outreach, and so that's a lesson learned there. And then, a lot of people say that they're not comfortable to drive over, especially if you're going too fast. So I'll leave that at that. To finish up here, I'll just mention the next steps kind of beyond this pilot. So first off, we're going to try to finish this pilot. So we have a couple outstanding items with the contractor to finish up before we can finally walk the site and complete it done. And then we're going to wait and allow for an adjustment period to make sure that traffic volumes have shifted to this new design on the street. And we're collecting, and then we can follow up and collect data during this pilot to fully understand and compare the impacts from when we collected our before data. And then we'll come back here to the Transportation Commission and present our findings. So I want to address the one big question a lot of people ask is, hey, these look great. Can we put them on our street? And so for that, I will say that we do start with our behavior-based programs. When we pitched our behavior-based programs to the Homestead community, there was a huge uptick in those, both in the Pace Car Pledge and the yard signs. So we do start there. It allows us to collect emails and start providing digital communication and make sure that everyone's on the same page. And then as for expanding additional locations, we also want to explore big data analytics. So this could be, with cell phone data, potentially, you have lots of data points, and you may be able to understand where speeding is occurring. And then you can overlay that with what type of trips are being taken. So is it a cyclist? Is it a walking? And then you can say, hey, where do we have people walking with high speeds? And do we have pedestrian facilities there? And then we can look at demographic data. So looking at, maybe we have elderly population where there's high speeds and there's walkers. And so trying to look at, this kind of context for an equity point of view of providing improvements. So that's kind of where we want to take it next. But with that, I'll open it up to questions and comments.
Commissioner questions?
First, I get the difference between these speed cushions and the speed humps, which are like concrete and that. So the results, what is the difference between a result of like a speed hump, speed bump, and a speed cushion?
The results of the difference of those, or what are the differences between those?
What is the outcome to the driver and reducing the speed on the street? Is one superior to another? What knowledge do we have?
Yeah, great question. So I think on one of my slides, I kind of glossed over this, but we installed our speed cushions. They're all modular. So they're made out of rubber, so they're all modular. So we installed most of them with 9 feet width. So that basically covers, a car is typically 6 or 7 feet wide. And so that would cover an entire car. We do have some smaller cushions that provide cuts for emergency vehicles to basically go through without slowing down. So it kind of touches on this response time for emergency vehicles. So some smaller ones, they may not be as effective for all cars, but you help the response times for those emergency vehicles. And so with this pilot, we can actually determine what are the different speed profiles we see over the different humps because we have installed both types. So I don't have any preliminary data here tonight, but that is something that we can determine from this because we do have the smaller ones as well as the larger ones so we can kind of understand those different impacts.
So is that, and I get the idea that we're piloting something versus like if you put in concrete, it's more permanent, right? But on the speed, like a typical concrete speed hump, does it have the same exact impact as this?
Oh. So how you actually install speed cushions, you may do like a 3-inch high and then like a 6 foot long kind of bump. And there's different profiles. Different cities adopt different profiles. These speed cushions, like I said, they're 10 feet long. I think they are 3 inches high. And so that has a certain profile. So that's something we're learning, and that's something that we can determine if we were to make it a permanent installation.
Got it. And since noise seems to be a big issue, not that you might be able to fix the noise, but can anything be done to reduce noise? And is the noise coming from just the cars are there and that's it?
Yeah, so the noise is mainly it could be the braking. It could be the acceleration afterwards because maybe someone wants to catch up, or it could just be the shocks going over the bump. The one thing we try to do is install it in between homes rather than directly in front of one home. That would just shoot it. Maybe in between homes could provide some sort of buffer, but it's a difficult situation to address.
If effective, does this type of cushion stay? And if so, what's the lifespan of it?
I don't know. I don't know that we're gonna look at the data and we'll bring it to you and we can provide talking points then. The lifespan of the product, it's rubber. I've heard good things, but it could only be 5 years depending on the number of large vehicles and the speed that people are taking it. So there may be some maintenance there. The process for installation is they drill down, they drop like a casing, like a little plastic casing, and then they put epoxy in there, and then they drill the bolt into that. So it seems pretty secure. And again, like I said, they're modular, so I think they're 3 feet by 2 feet, maybe. Yeah, they're kind of like a square, and so there's lots of individual pieces, and so they're all kind of tacked down. So if one needs to be replaced, that's a possibility. So.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I really like that data slide that you showed. My question from that is, do you have any kind of metric as to how many contacts you got from the public that feed into that? Like, is it 100, 200, 25, or not sure?
I can say recently my inbox has been very busy. I could say I've probably, since the installation last month, I've probably replied to around 50 individuals. Okay. But that's just the ones that reached out. There's a lot of people out there that maybe are cursing my name as they go over them. There may be people out there that are enjoying them. They're not reaching out. So that's just,
Right.
one act. That's a one data point, right?
Yep, great. And data-wise, so I looked at looks like we got about 17 emails for the meeting tonight, and it actually wasn't as divergent as I thought. I'll save that for comments. What's the installation goal here? And things I'm thinking of are, what are we trying to get the speed to? So it's a 25-mile-an-hour street. Are we trying to get it to 25? Are we trying to get it to considerably lower? What's that strategic goal?
Well, so originally the goal was just to get it to the posted speed limit because it was significantly higher, where it was hard to reduce it down to 25. But we didn't state any specific goal or metric to try to hit, but we want that comfort level for the pedestrians. And so I have been hearing from observations that some people have said that it is more comfortable as a pedestrian or a cyclist to be on here. And so that's kind of like the ultimate goal, I think, not some specific number.
And then we keep talking about this as a pilot. So is the long-term plan? We are definitely, absolutely planning on putting in some kind of speed moderation. And then if we are, is the permanent solution going to be these rubberized devices, or would we ever consider the more traditional pavement speed humps, or are we just too early to even ask that question?
Well, your first part I can't really touch on. I don't know if, how far this pilot goes. But I would like to present the data here back later this year. And then, if they were to go through and the pavement was going to be resurfaced here, they would come up anyways. And so then at that point, if we had support, we could repave them with the traditional profile and our standard.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I had a question. So was there like a particular reason for choosing Homestead? Was that like a problem area with a lot of speeding?
Yeah, so Homestead's pretty unique in that it's not just, it feels like, so we had PD reached out as well as residents, but it's unique in that there's essentially driveways facing the street, but there's also people that don't live in the neighborhood that will use this street to get through town. And so for that reason, it was a high priority.
And then I know you also mentioned that some complaints were that people were going 10 miles an hour rather than the 25 that you guys were aiming for. So was there increased congestion?
So it's 10 miles per hour just over the speed cushion, but I think generally overall the average is lower than 25. Sorry, your second part of there? Oh, it's congestion?
Yeah, was there like increased congestion?
That's another metric that we should probably look at, but not that I know of.
Thank you.
Commissioner Patch, do you have questions?
I do. Going back to the noise complaint, have we looked at like if it's higher when there's low traffic and therefore people might be going faster, or if it's higher during those high congestion commute hours?
So during the commute hours, I think it backs up a bit, but I don't have a decibel meter out there. I would like to get one. But I will say I've heard people say at nighttime is when it's most. I think sound travels a little bit more at night, and there's less other background noise to kind of block it out.
Okay, thank you.
This may be too early to ask the question, but we were talking earlier about permanent installations versus the rubber installation. Is there a noise difference with the material? And then the second question is, the rubber seems to be very preformed. It's monolithic down the corridor. And I'm wondering if you've looked at permanent installations and the feasibility of having basically a monolithic permanent installation that just goes down the corridor, or is the construction so delicate, since you're talking about only 3 inches or 2.5 inches, is the construction so delicate that it's hard to have a consistent permanent design for the speed humps in a corridor?
To answer your second point, I think it's possible to have a consistent design. For the first point, just my personal experience, I think the permanent installation would have noise more related to from the vehicle's shocks. And for this installation, I think it's more, the noise is more from the vehicle tires with the rubber. So I think the permanent installation you can roll over much quieter, and it's more about the shocks and then the speed and that relationship. So I haven't taken any data on those, but that's an interesting point, that the permanent installation could potentially be less noisy.
Yeah, thank you. At this time, I'll open the item up for public comment. Do we have any members of the public wishing to provide public comment?
No, I'm on time. Okay, I'm Michael Robertson. I live on West Holly Drive, which is just off of Homestead. And first of all, we just want to thank Matt. I'm sure there's a lot of people involved in this, but Matt's been our contact person. We've been trying to get the speed down on Homestead and Walnut for 42 years. She's been working on this, and we're thankful for the speed bumps. No mistake about it. Everybody who lives on Homestead or off of it is very thankful about that. So thank you, Matt, about that. Concerning the noise issue, there isn't. We were just back there chatting about that. I can look at my front door and see Homestead. I live on, it's where Walnut and Homestead kind of connect right there. I can see Homestead, Walnut's right here. And the noise is far less than it was before. So I can see the first speed bump on this side. I can hear the lack of traffic on that side. So it's not a problem with that. One thing that that my wife made sure, wanted me to make sure to tell you guys tonight, she has jury duty. She walks the neighborhood, not only our side, but also trying to cross over onto Hacienda and all of that on the other side of Homestead. And she said since those speed bumps went in, she feels so much safer crossing the street. And one thing I noticed, I like to be outside late afternoon, early evening, and there's so many people I've met. I've lived there 18 years, who I've never met before, who live on that side, the other side of Homestead, who are now crossing the street and walking our back street, side street. So we just want to say thank you for that. So it's, our quality of life is improved, absolutely, about this. And there are people who are complaining about, oh, the shocks on my truck, or there's too many bumps to get to Ignacio, or I got to slow down. Nobody's put signs up. You're going to hear some comments about that. I'm sure there are emails about this. But really what it comes to for us, the neighborhood of Homestead and Walnut, is it's about safety. It's about our family safety. And so for the people who want those speed humps removed, I would only ask one question, is at what time did you decide that the value of your time or comfort was greater than the value of the safety of our children and pets? So they can talk about noise or shocks, time. We're talking about safety of our families. Okay, thank you.
Next comment?
Sorry, if you could wait a minute. I asked her to pull up a better map so I could see a little bit more detail.
Okay, but after public comment, it's for your comment.
No, I just want to see it.
The map that shows the location of the speed cushions might be,
This one that's on the screen?
no, it's towards the end, I believe. Is that a better map?
Sorry, they're small. You'll see that? The one on the left, I think, with the little dots.
The
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Sorry, it's just helpful for me to like follow as you're talking about where you might live or something. Thank you.
please go ahead with your comments.
Thank you for all of your good work. I have to thank Matt Redmond profusely for this. My husband started on this 42 years ago, as we said, and I know but we've been trying to get traffic to slow down to the speed limit. It's not too much to ask. Safety is involved. A couple of comments, positive, but could we illuminate the white stripes on the temporary? Because I've received lots of neighborhood comment about they're not seen at night at all. So people go charging over them, and it's kind of dangerous. And that may be the noise we're talking about at night, because they're not seen. If there's fluorescence involved, I don't know if you can do that. I just want to thank you from the community. I live at 1021 Homestead. It's right in the middle of all of this on the Homestead side, and I can get out of my driveway now. I mean, I can't tell you the years that I would sit there and have to jump out and have people screech to a halt for me to get out of my driveway, and that's real common to the residents on Homestead. I'm more than happy. The courtesy that's been extended, I can't say enough about how much better. This may not last, but for right now, it's really a beautiful thing. And there is a lot more neighborhood participation in the neighborhood now due to the safety. It's much better safety. And that's all I have to, I think. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Hi.
Go ahead.
My name is Debbie Jennings, and I live on Scotts Court off of Scotts Lane. I guess I'm going to be one of those dissenters of the Homestead group, which I don't mean to be, other than I believe in safety. I believe we should do what we can to make safe neighborhoods, safe streets. But I don't think that the installation of the speed bumps, the decision to make it, wasn't democratic. Everybody that lives in Walnut Heights, in Rudgear, Merwood, Walnut Knolls, etc., use those two streets to get to the hospital, to doctors' offices, to WCI, downtown, and. Most people didn't know that this was going to happen. And I don't think that you all gave enough attention to those of us that have to use those streets. We don't have any other way to go. And I'm certainly not for speeding. I think 25 is perfectly reasonable. But I question the veracity of Homestead being a drag strip, which someone said to me. I know that there was data on it, and the average speed based on the data that I saw that Matt sent to me was 27 miles an hour. 27 miles an hour in a 25? Does that really warrant speed bumps? The 85th percentile, which is, 85% of the people drive at that particular rate and less, was 32 miles an hour. I think you really have to question whether you need to put in speed bumps for that kind of a difference. I just don't think it's practical for all the residents that live here, not just Homestead. And yes, our cars are, going over those bumps. It's terrible. I mean, it's terrible. You hit your head practically going over them. I can't get over a speed bump going higher than 10. And I've taken video, I've sent it to people. It's awful. If you keep speed bumps, you got to change that height and that design. But the other point is that for emergency vehicles to get to the hospital, everybody that lives in my neighborhood, we got to go down Homestead. And to get to the hospital, my husband had a stroke in August, and if he had been going over those bumps, he probably could have died, literally. So I guess my time's up.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional comments?
Hi, my name is Deborah Carboni, and I live at 1050 Homestead, which is right in the middle of the street. I absolutely want to thank Matt so much, and I don't know exactly how to pronounce your name, but Ms. Boardman, I know you've been involved in all of this. The speed humps have made an absolute 100% difference for the neighbors on Homestead Avenue, and I have to respectfully disagree with what you said, and I'm sure there was some miscommunication, because the average speed is absolutely not 25 miles an hour on that street. Before the speed humps were installed, it absolutely not. Right across the street from me is one of those speed signs, so you can see the speed. Out my front window, I see the speed. The average speed of cars going down that street was in the 40s and 50s. It would get up as high as the 60s and 70s sometimes. Nobody drives.
If you could address us, we'd appreciate it.
I understand. I'm sorry. I just want to say thank you so much. The speed humps were not even fully installed when I started noticing the difference already. The ones that were installed near my house already, and like I said, I've got this speed sign out my front window, so I can absolutely see it. And I just can't thank you all enough. Monica and some other people have been fighting for 40-some years. I've been here for 21 years. Trying to do the same thing, and so I am just so thankful that Ms. Boardman and Matt finally started listening to the neighbors and did something about this. And I would absolutely 100% appreciate if you would keep them, and I know that the neighbors would too. We live on the street, and yes, of course, there are people, you know, on other streets who have to drive down the street, but like someone said, Homestead is also a cut-through street. So people from all over the place come and go down Homestead Avenue, trying to get to Ignacio or from Ignacio, using us as a cut-through. And so we really need them to drive slowly, and they now are, and we can go out and have a walk in, you know, on our street. We can go bike riding on our street. There's a lot of bicyclists who come down Homestead Avenue on a regular basis. It is so much safer and so much better. So thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Any additional comments from the audience? No, you've made your comment. You can, you can speak with staff, with Matt after the meeting, and you can send an email to Matt as well. Are there any comments over Zoom?
No, they can't do Zoom anymore.
Oh, they can't? Oh, that's right. Forgot about that. Thank you. Yeah. At this time, are there any commissioner comments? And I'll start to the left.
Can I ask staff a question for clarification? Am I allowed to do that? Matt, can you help me understand what is, I know you probably don't have the data in front of you, but what is the average speed that you were looking at here?
Yeah, so Debbie's correct with the data. I sent her some preliminary data. So when you set speeds, you look at the 85th percentile. You look at what 85% of the vehicles are doing, because you don't want a huge differential in speeds. And so you set the speed limit signs that are posted are set basically to the 85th, what 85 out of 100 cars are doing. And so that's kind of the data we look at. We don't look at the average. And so that 32 number is more of what we were looking at than the 27 that she mentioned.
Okay. Can we take it back to comments?
Yeah, thanks. That was helpful. So the first thing I would do on outreach is I think we need to expand the outreach as we move forward, especially if we move into another phase. I know that it was concentrated on the areas of immediate impact, but as this pilot program moves forward, I think we can, not to everybody in the entire city, but if we could look at expanding the geographic zone, knowing that people are using this as other arteries, I think that would be helpful. So just keep that in mind as you move forward. I would also encourage, if you can get a decibel meter or something out there, I don't know how easy or hard that is, just to see what the noise level is and how bad it is. Or staff can always take turns sleeping there and reporting back. So thanks.
Commissioner.
Yeah, just a few comments. I want to say thank you for your thorough work in exploring so many different options for this neighborhood in response to the neighborhood concern. I think it's great that there already seem to be some benefits to these. I do think that communication to surrounding neighborhoods might be important, just to explain what the issue is, what the safety goals are, that kind of a thing moving forward. But other than that, I just want to say thank you and great work to both of you.
Great, thanks. One thing I wanted to share for the benefit of the public attending tonight is we're an advisory commission, not a decision-making. So we give our best advice, but the final decision will rest with the city, just with our input. So I've driven Homestead a lot. I'm one of those people. And I understand, you know, the both sides of what we're hearing from the public and what we're hearing from the city. My experience with the current setup, and that's why I'm really happy it's just a pilot, is I feel like in my car I've got to drop down to about 10 miles an hour to safely go over those. And then we also heard from someone else tonight, one of the things that really stuck out to me is it's really hard for me to see those things coming up at night. So I think anything we can do, and if it's not in the pilot, in the final solution to make it easier for drivers to know that's coming up at night would be really good. The email feedback tonight was an interesting split. There was 10 pro, 7 against. So it was actually more evenly split than I thought it would be from the folks that actually emailed in. I guess my final advice would be we need to balance the needs of the people that live on this street with the people that don't live on the street that actually use the street. I think it's very reasonable to do some kind of mitigation measure to get the speed to the speed limit. So if there's any way we can have a more moderate compromise way of using, if it's going to be some kind of speed bump, for lack of a better term, where it can kind of get that traffic to moderate down to the 25, that would seem to be the best compromise between the people that just use the road in general and protecting the residents. I do see there's a lot of pedestrians, people walking their dogs, riding their bikes, and I'm always nervous driving on that street when I see them there. So I really, even though I don't live on the street, I really appreciate and hear the concerns for the people that live on that street. But I'm also balancing it with the myriad of other residential streets with driveways facing the streets that are all supposed to be 25 miles an hour, and we have no mitigation. I just think that these couple of streets are very unique because they are cut through, get away from downtown avenues. So I think they're worthy of special treatment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your work, and it was really nice to hear this presentation, especially since last month, I think, I went to give a presentation to the Youth Leadership Commission, and I got absolutely bombarded with questions about the speed cushions on Homestead, so which I'd previously not known about, so hopefully now I can go back and give a more insightful update. And I really like how there's a lot of potential, and it probably already has like significantly increased local safety. And so I'm excited to see more data as it comes out, and hopefully there'll be like more improvements. And I haven't driven Homestead yet since I got my permit in December. So hopefully if I drive there, I'll be more comfortable knowing there's less speeding and that the pedestrians are safer. So thank you.
Commissioner Patch, do you have comments?
I do, yes. I want to thank staff for this presentation. This was really great. For the next time that we hear a report on how this pilot is doing, I also would love to see some data around the noise and like connecting that to timing, because obviously if it's happening at night and keeping people awake, that's a lot worse than in the middle of the day. Also, you mentioned that the speed humps that you have in there, or speed cushions that you have in there, there's different styles where you can have some cut through for emergency responses. So I would like to see how much adding these have decreased the amount of time it takes, or like increase the amount of time it takes to drive on these roads for that emergency response time. But also like what the impact on some of our micro transit options are. I use Homestead a lot on a scooter, and there's no way to avoid the humps with a scooter, and it's actually quite dangerous. And you're not supposed to use them in the pedestrian thoroughfare. So like something like that of what the impact is for other modes of transit, whether that's biking or scooter, etc. Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation and for trying to respond to the speeding that's occurring in the public concerns for the people that live along the corridor. I think I'd like to see a few things, and some of these you may have already addressed. Commissioner Patch mentioned the scooters right off the bat, bicyclists. I noticed that the cushion design that you have looked like it went across the entire lane, and I'm wondering if I would suggest that you consider a 3-cushion design and look into the safety implications of that. That would allow 2 things to happen. One, the bicyclists and the scooters could stay in the vehicle lane and avoid the bump. And it also might allow for a slightly narrower middle hump that the fire trucks could get through more easily, while still maintaining the benefit of slowing down. So there might be some design solutions that I'd encourage you to look into. I know you have more flexibility when you're putting in permanent solutions versus buying something off the shelf. So if you could take that into consideration. I think on your before and after studies, I'd really appreciate to see, I know we get into speed and average speed and 85th percentile speed and the highest speed. I'd really like to see you look at travel time. So when I'm starting at the beginning of the corridor, how long does it take for me to travel through the corridor? You have the before data, you know it's 32 miles per hour, so you can calculate that. So what would be the speed or the travel time to get through the corridor if you had the lumps in place? The aspect, I heard that you installed the devices at different distances. If so, I'd really appreciate understanding what the speeds are in the middle between the lumps. That would help us understand what how the drivers are treating the corridor. I've read that when lumps are spaced too far apart, drivers tend to speed up, which means there's more acceleration and more noise, and then they slam on their brakes. Because the lumps are further apart, they do that. But if they're closer, then drivers are less inclined to speed up and slow down quickly. And so you potentially could get a more smooth speed characteristic along the corridor. And if you're able to do that, then it would result potentially in more frequent speed humps because they'd be closer together, but you might be able to then lower the profile, which would have less noise for the cars as they're going over the lump or the hump, whatever you call them. It would allow for a more consistent driving pattern along the corridor because there'd be less incentive to speed up, but the drivers wouldn't need to slow down to 5 or 10 or whatever they're slowing down to with the pilot program. So I'd encourage you to look at some solutions around those lines when you present the data. And I think travel time data is really important. I think that it would be helpful to understand the safety implications of the different speeds. So you had that generic chart up, but if you know that your 85th percentile speed is 32 and your post or after condition speed is whatever it is, maybe you could compare more precisely those two differences to understand what the implications are to people vulnerable users, pedestrians, bicyclists, if they get hit at those two different speeds. I think that would be helpful. And then I would encourage you to look at the 85th percentile speed rather than the average speeds. The Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices talks about the 85th percentile speed. Historically, since the beginning of driving, we've been setting speed limits based on the 85th percentile speed. So that's the expectation that we should have if we're driving a corridor. And so when you post the speed limit at 25 miles per hour, the expectation is that 85% of the people will drive at 25 miles per hour or less. And so I think it's important to use that value when you are presenting the before and after data rather than average speed or the 10 mile per hour pace speed and what have you. That's the number that the police use, that's the number that traffic engineers use, and so that's the number that we should be designing to, in my opinion. And then I think I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is for commission consideration, and it's the crosswalk treatments. At this time, I invite staff to provide their presentation.
Okay. Hello again, everyone. I will be talking briefly about our recent crosswalk treatments. And my name is Brianna Byrne. I'm Associate Traffic Engineer here at the City of Walnut Creek. So, quick overview. In 2023, as part of our unsignalized crosswalk budget, made some treatments that were new to Walnut Creek. So we're going to kind of go over the challenges at these locations that we were facing, and then what elements, piece by piece, went into this improvement. And then we will go over the 2024, this next round. So these locations, we had a couple on North Main Street at the 3 locations, Lesnick, 3rd Street, and SOS Drive, Bancroft Road at Stratton Road and Gilport Lane, and then Mount Diablo Boulevard at Bont, and this is Ace Hardware, and that's what's photographed below. So what are the challenges consistent across these 6 locations? We have marked crosswalks here, and pedestrians, when they need to cross, they're crossing 5 lanes of travel. So that's 2 in each direction, and then either a 2-way left turn lane or a dedicated left turn lane. Each one of these roads have a posted speed of 30 to 40. And again, when we talk about the speed of vehicles and the vulnerability of humans, you know, the higher speed leads to the higher chance of a fatality if there is an impact. And then lastly, each one of these had a possibility of multiple threat pedestrian crash. So we'll go into what that is. So in this image here, we have a similar situation. This one just shows 4 lanes. But we have a crosswalk here. Car A, you know, maybe they were speeding or they didn't see the ped for whatever reason. They stopped very close to this crosswalk. The pedestrian, they see a car is yielding for them, so they proceed to cross. What happens is there's a second lane, and now car B, the view between the pedestrian and this vehicle is blocked. So this can happen. You know, multiple lane crosswalks. It can also happen if we have parked cars, you know, near these crosswalks. We have this line of sight blockage. It's one of the reasons we have this daylighting law now. So our goals going into this, we wanted to improve the crosswalk visibility. Again, these are very wide roadways. We wanted to reduce the speeds. And again, to this point of the speed limits and the 85 percentile, we have people going above, while 85% are going at or below. We do have people going above. So we're trying to bring this down as we have this ped vehicle conflict. And then we did want to address this multiple point threat. And this is what we ended up with. Again, this is Mount Diablo at Bont, but the design went across, was the same for North Main Street and Bancroft as well. So we're gonna go and break this down into 4 sections, with the first one being this in-street pedestrian paddle sign. We get requests for these a lot. Pedestrians like them, and they're very, very visible to drivers. So we have that as a pro. It improves driver awareness. The downside is that they only have so many impacts in them. And when it comes to traffic calming materials, they're on the more expensive side. So we have both the cost of the material and then the time to go out and replace them. So while they're great, there's some downsides there on their own. Then item B, we have narrowed lanes. So it may not be obvious. Most drivers don't really know how wide a lane is, but traditionally in traffic engineering, they've been 12 feet. There's been recent pushes for more narrow lanes. Caltrans accepts 11 feet. So as part of this design, we went down to 10. Some agencies in the Bay Area go as low as 9. So it's one of these very easily implemented means to narrow. And when you narrow, you get more pavement width. But the downside is, on its own, striping does not enforce speed. When there's no one else on the road and you just have striping, you know, it's more of a guidance. A car can veer off. So that's why, when paired with a hardened lane line, and that's the term here, the photo shows a hardened center line. So this is in Concord at Oak Grove and Treat Boulevard. Around the city, we've placed them, you know, on striped bulb outs, and then at these crosswalks, we place them on the white lane lines. So what a hardened lane line does is it emphasizes and essentially forces the desired behavior, the desired driver behavior. So in this case here at Oak Grove and Treat Boulevard, that striped median should be restricting turns into and out of that driveway, but without any type of physical boundary, people were still doing it, so they installed this. So when we implemented those hardened lane lines at these crosswalks, we emphasized that double white striping, that narrow travel lane. Oh, and then one thing to note here, the downside for these is each post is an additional asset that the city has to maintain. And while they can take more hits than the paddle signs, and that's generally true where we've installed them around the city, is they can kind of take a beating. They do tend to not look as nice, and so we still end up replacing them quite frequently. And then the other item here is the shark's teeth. And this is guidance in that case where we saw that car stopping very close to the crosswalk. These shark's teeth paired with a sign right there that says yield here to pedestrians, it gives that additional guidance for drivers saying that this is where you need to stop. And the pro there informs drivers where to yield. Again, the con is it's only striping. But what we have when we combine each one of these treatments, so the paddle sign, if you go and look at each one, there are signs of it being dinged. But what we've noticed is that by placing these posts in advance, we're queuing cars up to not accidentally hit the sign. So they've lasted significantly longer than ones where we didn't have this type of treatment. The narrow travel lanes, striping on their own, it's one thing, but as soon as we get the actual vertical element to really squeeze it down, speeds have been lower. And again, addressing this multiple threat of guiding vehicles and drivers about where to stop. So looking at the locations for this next year, we are looking to do these same hardened lane line treatments at 4 locations. We have Tice Valley Boulevard at the Safeway Shopping Center. And then Civic Drive at Deodora Way, which is north of Parkside, and then also Arroyo Way and Carlback Avenue, which are closer to here in that downtown Civic Park. There is one more crosswalk on Civic Drive that's actually split between city and county, and we're coordinating with them so that whatever happens is we can have a corridor, a uniform corridor treatment. We have we're incorporating pedestrian refuge islands into a few of these. So again, Tice Valley Boulevard, but this is, there's a couple mid-block crosswalks in this area. One of them at the Tice Valley Community Gym, and then this Tice Oaks Apartments. It's those two mid-blocks in that same area. And then Geary Road at Vessing Road, which is a school crosswalk. We, depending on budget, and I do have this note there, we are going to be adding flashing beacons. So where before we just had striping and posts, we are doubling back, pending budget, to the 2023 locations and in these 2024 where they don't already exist. And then as part of that, we do have some Shadelands Business Park locations, mid-block crosswalks at Mitchell Drive and Shadelands Drive. And with that, I'll open it up to the floor.
Commissioner questions? Commissioner Jake?
I always have questions, sorry. Pedestrian refuge island, do we have a picture or can you just describe one?
So what a pedestrian refuge island, oh, a good example. So Mount Diablo, you're heading towards Safeway, and there's that flashing, it's a mid-block crosswalk with the flashing lights. So the pedestrians have to cross 2 lanes of travel, and then there's a protected area, which is that median, there's trees, there's rocks, and then they can then proceed to cross the other direction of 2 lanes. So that middle area is called the pedestrian refuge island, and it's a relief between vehicle conflicts.
Got it. And then are these beacons you mentioned, are they anything different than, the only ones I'm familiar with are, I push the button and under the sign they've got are you talking about something different?
It is those ones, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Those are great because they catch my attention when someone pushes it. I love those. And then my only other question is, this is all really good stuff. What kind of data and how do we capture data to support the efficacy of all these measures?
So we do have before data. We obviously want to collect after data. Just again, we're in a very, data is available to us right now. I mean, we know the speeds have been decreased, and again, this falls back to the SAFE system and prioritizing safety. The efficacy or whatever that was is these are safety improvements at the end of the day.
And when we say we know the speed's going down, are we measuring it with devices or is it more anecdotal?
So we have a lot of sources to collect data. We have radar feedback signs. Some of those are just constantly collecting data. We have some big data sources, that use GPS and cellular signals. Otherwise, we can just hire a count crew to roll out some tubes for us.
So I'll add to that. We do have speed survey data, so that's something that we're required to do to make our speed limits enforceable. So the last time we did that was 2019 was when the data was collected, but then it was 2020 when it was adopted by council. So that gives us some information. These specific treatments that Brianna is talking about, these are, it's these multi-lane streets, higher speeds. And if you refer back to this local roadway safety plan that was put together, this was specifically a profile that was identified as, let's say, problematic, right? That there is a safety issue between conflicts with pedestrians and higher speed vehicles. So in terms of efficacy, we do have, plenty of information just in the traffic engineering world related to any of these improvements singularly, but also, combined. These are pretty typical countermeasures, and the countermeasures are discussed in their effectiveness. It's called a crash reduction factor or crash modification factor, is also in the local roadway safety plan. So this is us just combining everything together. We basically tried it out. we're taking this systemic approach, which is what I like to say is we're copy pasting the same improvements at all the locations that have very similar characteristics. So in terms of, like a data, if we were to study it for efficacy or for data purposes, it would really just be for us to, the way I view it is it would almost be for fun to provide from a traffic engineering data standpoint to geek out on the data versus seeing the actual yielding rates and being able to conduct that kind of study. That would be something separate that we'd have to do sort of following it. But this does basically all that to say this follows best practice and it follows what's in the local roadway safety plan, and we're just doing the systemic rollout of it.
Okay, and I would imagine also lots of other cities are all throughout the state or country are doing these things and seeing positive impacts. So we're not reinventing the wheel, it sounds like.
No, so yeah, since we've installed these, I mean, the county is interested, Pleasant Hill is interested, like it's in other jurisdictions and it's spreading, so.
Great, thank you. Those are my questions.
Commissioner Kagan?
These are in commercial corridors mostly that you've showed us tonight. I'm curious if you've had any feedback from the local businesses about the impact of these, whether on business or their employees.
So prior to the installation, we reached out to the businesses along these corridors through letters, and then we had one of the engineers literally go door to door to make sure that they had the conversation with business owners. And since then, we haven't heard a complaint or a positive. We haven't heard either way.
I had a question for the narrow lanes. You mentioned that there would be like extra pavement for other uses. What are like examples of other uses? Like, would they be like bike lanes or?
Potentially, yeah. So, good, excellent point. So, if you look at the lower picture there, just taking away the extra lane width, we were able to do that buffer between the lanes. We didn't change the location of that 2A left turn lane, the yellow striping. So all of this was done within the existing conditions. So just taking away that extra lane width, we can add the buffer. This location had a shoulder. If there's a corridor that is in need of a bike lane, then absolutely. And if anything, we could maybe add an extra buffer for that bike lane as well. But yeah, it's reallocating pavement to other uses.
Thank you.
Commissioner Patch?
My question was actually very similar. I was wondering if you had looked at, like, compared the intersections that you're doing this at with any intersections that maybe the Sustainability Action Plan or other plans the City Council has passed about bike lanes, so that, from a budgetary perspective, we're not doing something that then 6 months from now we're going to have to change because we're implementing bike lanes.
Yeah, so we're definitely coordinating with the sustainability group. So we know that we have to increase our bike lanes by 25%. So yeah, we've looked at the corridors, but something to note: these wide roadways that do have higher speeds, the type of facility that's context appropriate for them is something more high quality is the term. So it's not just a bike lane stripe next to higher vehicle travel lanes. So something on this type of corridor, and I don't know about Mount Diablo, but I know Bancroft has bike lanes in the plan. So Bancroft long term would be something, either a separated class 4, it's called class 4, where there's some kind of vertical separation between the bikes and the vehicles. That would be something that we would look for in terms of bike facilities there. But then just to further, these are really affordable temporary materials that even if we put them in now and then 5 years later we have a project to make something more permanent, we're not precluded from doing that with this type of improvement.
Okay, so you're concerned about like the cost of maintaining them is really about like if they are the long-term solutions and we have to constantly change them, not if we put them in and then need to take them out and adjust accordingly.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you so much.
I had two questions. You had mentioned the pedestrian refuges that you're going to put in 2024. Are there any vertical elements that you're considering for those, or will it just be paint like the two-way on the previous slide you were on?
Mm-hmm. These would be
right. The middle two-way left turn lane. It's just paint. So there's a refuge, but it's just paint. Will the refuges that you put in at other locations, will they also be just paint, or will they have some vertical component to them?
So these are vertical. We're looking at concrete. We're looking at more. We're still looking at material, and again, that goes into the cost, both of the actual material, the cost of construction, the cost of maintenance. We're looking at the cost, but for these locations, the Tice Valley Boulevard and then the Geary Road, these would be some type of vertical element, some kind of, it'd be additional buffer than just striping or just posts.
So something like on Mount Diablo, you had mentioned the buffer, the refuge at Broadway Plaza. There's also a different style of a buffer, but it's at the trail crossing of Mount Diablo as well. But they both have vertical elements. It's just that one is a lot more expensive to build and maintain than the other one. So that's what you're looking at?
Yeah, it would be, at least for these, actually it's true for both of them. There's driveways in these areas. So we're not looking to restrict movement into and out of driveways so that we wouldn't be doing anything long and grand like at Broadway Plaza. It would be focused at the actual crosswalk.
Okay. And then the buffer width on the stripe between the lanes, what is that? Looks like about maybe 2 feet or
So
3 or?
It varies, probably between 2 and 3. Yeah, the way that the plans had it laid out was to give the 10-foot travel lanes, and that buffer width varies. So I want to say it was a minimum of 2 feet.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll open the item up for public comment. Do we have any members in the public that want to speak?
We do not.
We do not. Great. At this time, are there any commissioner comments? And I'll start to my left and we'll just proceed.
Great, thank you. So I'd say the Mount Diablo crosswalk and the treat, there are 2 places I'm very familiar with. I get to drive past each one at least 3 times a week, if not 5. And I notice, and I know Treat and Oak Grove, I think you were using that as an example, but I don't think that was your work. But I do notice that it makes a big difference. To your point about the data, I'm literally driving them, and that one in front of Ace on Mount Diablo, like you could not really see people walking. And now it does force you to slow down. It does force me to be recognizing that there may be people in there, so I could hit the right pedal. Slow down and hit the left pedal, and just be aware of that. And on the Oak Grove and Treat, like having those permanent barriers, semi-permanent barriers there, I have seen multiple times cars try to make a left turn into the Trader Joe's shopping center from the right-hand turn lane, so going across 5 lanes. And I have now seen that just slows everybody down. It stops them from having the capacity to go into that shopping center. So to your point on data, I'm living these intersections or these crosswalks, and I just want to compliment that, and it's good work. That's it.
I too have noticed a difference, and I want to say thank you, especially the Mount Diablo crossing. With that being so close to 24, I mean, sometimes that before felt like a freeway entrance already, or, getting off the exit, cars were still going very fast. So It's certainly nice to see the slowdown there. Something that I would love to see incorporated more into some of this work is like pedestrian education signage. I've seen this in some other communities, even outside of California. I don't know that I've ever seen it here, but just reminding pedestrians to be mindful, to make eye contact with drivers, to also be advocates for themselves. I think it's good to try to develop that in our walking and cycling communities, to be mindful. We're trying to make the roads safer for them as well, of course, but just those reminders I think are good. And then I know this is probably a cost factor, but I know that we do invest a lot in public art here in Walnut Creek. And, you see it on things like utility boxes and things that are very practical, but I'd love to see it incorporated into things like crosswalks and some of our transportation structure as well. And I think this might be an area that we can do that eventually. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for your work.
One of the things my wife used to always laugh at is when we would cross from Ilfrenial over to Broadway Plaza Lane, there's the crosswalk where you push the button and it had the lights in the ground. And I always go, okay, we're doing the runway lights. I'll give you an aviation analogy. As a pilot, the most effective thing the FAA puts at airports to keep people from accidentally going into a runway, known as a runway incursion, are both at each end of the entrance to the runway, the alternating yellow lights, and then the flashing lights in the ground before you get there. So I'm a big fan of lighting devices to wake people up for pedestrians.
Yeah, I really like the efforts being made to increase pedestrian safety, and I also like the variety of solutions to address these challenges. I would also suggest more methods of increasing visibility at night, and I look forward to seeing these in-street pedestrian paddle signs, narrowed lanes, hardened lane lines, and truck teeth as I continue my journey in learning how to drive. So thank you.
Commissioner Patch?
Thank you for this presentation. I loved the combination of these different ways of reducing traffic speed. I noticed when they went up, and I was actually in the car with somebody who had no idea why some of these things would be implemented. So it was a cool thing for me to be able to educate them about why our city would do something of this nature, which to me just kind of points to maybe the Transportation Commission can help staff by sharing why some of these things work and why we've decided to do them. Because I think there's still a lot of confusion with people who use private vehicles as their primary transportation.
Okay. Thank you for these. I drive Mount Diablo quite a bit, and it's amazing the difference. I've tried to notice if I slow down, and I think maybe I slow down from, maybe 35 to 32, something like that. But what I do is I say, oh, this is a crosswalk, and I look, and I am more attentive. I know it's anecdotal, it's just me, but I am more attentive when I pass through these, whether it's here or on the other corridors. And so I think that they provide a benefit that is great. You might want to check the latest Caltrans design bulletin. I think it's 94. I think Caltrans has changed, and they allow now 10.5-foot lanes on state roads, and so that just might allow you to do a little bit more if you want, as far as narrowing goes. But I find these to be really great, and I wish other communities would install them. They certainly, at least for me, they make me more attentive now than when it was your top photo. So thank you. Next on the agenda is an item for commission consideration, downtown parking guidance project update. At this time, I invite staff to provide their presentation.
Thanks. Nice job, Brianna. So we call that treatment the Fremont treatment because we stole it from Fremont because one of our engineers saw it. So we looked at Google Street View and basically replicated it. So if you're ever out and about and you see something interesting that could be good, let us know. Take a picture. You had it.
This is more agenda items and more public comment than we had in the entire year I was chair.
I know, it is, yeah.
Wait till that speed cushion update one. Okay, the last item here. Thanks for sticking with us, going on 8 o'clock. So this is kind of some work I've been doing related to parking guidance. So here's an update on this project. Again, I'm Matt Redmond, Associate Traffic Engineer. So in this presentation, I'll cover the grant that allowed us to start this project, that funds it. And I'll cover our existing parking signage that you may have noticed. And if you didn't notice, you'll notice it after this presentation because I'll point some things out. Some parking sensors that we've installed, our plans to digitize the curb, and ideas looking forward. So back in 2015, before I was here, before Smadar was here, MTC issued a grant to us to help reduce emissions and reduce circling the block looking for parking. So with this grant, we've looked to improve our parking guidance to allow people to find parking easier. The first step of that has been to implement parking sensors and provide this real-time occupancy information, really basically putting a data aspect to the existing parking conditions. So kind of first off, before we get into the sensors, we started looking at our parking signage. So we have lots of different static signs around downtown. However, they may not be all uniform in design and they may not be in the optimal location. And so we're looking to update that and provide a list of recommendations that can be prioritized based on the sign characteristics, and then update those signs. So you can see here a sample data sheet with some basic information about a sign, where it is, where the arrow's pointing, what type of design it's used, and then some analysis, and then the recommendations on the bottom. So I'll go through a little bit of that. So here's our different parking signs. They're pretty scattered randomly throughout the downtown. You can see the different colors correspond to the different signs. And basically it's a patchwork. It's been built over time. And so I think we kind of started with the green, and then there was a push for the purple. And then more recently we've been going with the blue. And so really the idea is to just make this consistent. Parking is hard enough when you're frustrated and late and you just want to find a place to park or get to a garage. I should really emphasize this is all to get to a garage. And so to change your sign is can be very hard to understand. So making that consistent, uniform, and then making sure that the arrows are pointing in the correct direction. So just doing a full-on sign analysis. And so what that looks like is we have some technology to understand the visibility of these signs. So using a mapping on the left with corresponding video on the right, we can understand when these signs become visible. So we can put a distance to how visible each sign is. Now, if we know the speed limit of that road, we can estimate how much time you have to make your decision. Following that, after the point where the sign is, there is a time where you have to make a decision of turning. And so I really call it the action time. I'm sorry, I didn't update that. It's an action time after the sign to make your turn. So you can see here a sign on the right is visible, and you have a time after it to make a right turn to go to the garage. So if we lay this out, we have around 56 signs, parking signs in the downtown, and we can graph out the decision time. And so we can understand which signs are our worst performing in terms of decision times and which are our worst performing in terms of action time. Now you can imagine a sign that's in front of a garage that's saying it's a parking garage, that would have a 0 for an action time because it's literally at the point of action. But you could imagine some sign that says parking guidance this way, but you're at the turn and you can't actually make that maneuver. So that's some of these blue dots on the bottom right hand side of this graph. So basically we're doing some analysis on the sign. Moving on to parking sensors. In 2020, we installed around 1,200 parking sensors. These are flush mounted to the ground, and they provide dwell time, how long people park, the occupancy, if it's a covered spot or if it's a used spot or not, and then turnover, how many cars are going in there each day. And so these are on our downtown on-street parking spaces, so we can get this information and understand how the curb is being used. These were particularly helpful during COVID when we had a lot of dynamic situations with our curb, outdoor dining, and curbside pickup. And recently we promoted our curbside pickup to permanent spaces with poles, and so we were able to kind of help use this data to figure out where those can go. And so moving forward with those sensors, since we have that data, it's really about not just using it internally for different metrics, but how can other people use it? And so there's this foundation called the Open Mobility Foundation. They're a nonprofit. They kind of came out of the whole scooter and bike share programs in LA. And so with the Open Mobility Foundation, they have this curb data specification that allows you to basically publish curb information to potential fleet delivery vehicles or Uber and Lyft so that they know where curbs are, where parking spaces are, so they can route directly to them. And then with our sensors, they can understand if they are occupied or not. And then it can also give us metrics that we can understand at a more granular level about how these parking spaces are being performed. So that's kind of our next push, is to publish these parking sensor data into this curb data specification. And I would be, I don't want to forget that this is not, we don't just look at vehicle traffic in downtown, we're also looking at other modes to get to downtown. And so recently we put together a map of all the bike parking in the downtown. I shouldn't say all, most of it. It's hard to find every little bike rack. But we basically took a big inventory of all the bike racks. So we have their location, we have a picture of them, and we have a number of capacity. So how many bikes you could park there, or scooters. So it's a dynamic map. It's now available online. You can see the link in the QR code here. And this is just something we're kind of trying out. So feedback is welcome at this point. We just kind of want to explore this space and see how this information could be helpful to people. So to kind of recap and look forward, with the parking guidance program, we eventually would like to, after the digital push of this data, we'd like to kind of look at a physical implementation of a monument sign. So you can see here on the right a sign providing real-time information about garage availability and maybe directional arrows as well. That's something that can change. So we want to kind of evaluate that. We have that in front of a lot of our garage, that digital signage to show if parking is available, but putting that, maybe a turn or two away from that garage to really broadcast it out, or on the entrances of the city to kind of give you a heads up and plan ahead. And then, Park SJ in San Jose, they made a nice online, parksj.com, I believe. They have a nice web interface that's mobile friendly, so you can check your garage occupancies. You can also see a map of where to park. So providing an online portal could also be very helpful, given that most people have a phone and they can kind of plan ahead. And then continue to promote active transportation, considering e-bike usage and other modes that might get to downtown. And then I also want to mention that we recently received another grant from MTZ to just focus on a downtown curbside management plan. So this would essentially use some of the data here we talked about tonight to look at our policies and possibly provide recommendations for changing those policies. And then again, using the Parking Guidance Project to implement some of those changes. So that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Commissioner questions? No?
Considering what we heard about that newer 20-foot law, how much do you expect that to impact this moving forward?
We already did a really good job of that law in the downtown. Like I said, I think there's one parking space being removed, and then we're adding it back on Locust. But this is the law, the red curb in front of crosswalks.
Yeah.
I think the curb management plan might look at it more.
Yeah, so in that downtown curb management plan, we'll look at how we can like assign the use of the curb. It could be for parking, it could be for loading, it could be for, handicapped spaces, that kind of thing. But like Matt had mentioned before, we already did take a look at all of those metered parking spaces. Maybe there's a few in sort of some of these outlying areas, because this curbside management plan actually extends a little further out than just what the metered zone area is currently. So yes, it's possible that there will be a loss of on-street parking, but it would address if there is a need for red curb, period. It would also look at, if there's a need for, let's say, a bulb out, that would also take up that same kind of curbside space. And so it is accounting for, it's not just for vehicles, it's also for bike parking or for pedestrian space, or it could be something, or, even a bus stop.
Okay. And then thank you for that. And I think when people think about parking and parking garages, they're like, I'm going to have to find a spot. I have to take a ticket. I have to keep track of that ticket. I might have to pay. Who knows how much it's going to cost, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm wondering if you've looked at any ways to ease that process as well?
Great question. Looking at the full perspective of that experience of parking, right? I haven't. I've just been focused on getting into the garage. But that's a good point. And there is kind of, we hire operators for the garages, and so there is stuff that, I don't have direct control over. But that's something I can, so you're saying like more, like maybe using your phone to kind of just drive in, kind of make it less transaction?
Yeah, making it easier. Some garages, you can do credit card in and out kind of a thing, where you don't have to take a ticket and keep track of it and that kind of a thing, just making it a little bit more streamlined and easier. Also maybe making sure that we're communicating, when the garages are free, or what, initial time you get for free, that kind of a thing, just public communication kind of efforts as well around it.
Yeah, that's a good comment. I'll add that.
Thanks.
The data from the parking sensors, I presume it's technically not available to the public today in any form. Is that true?
Put in a public credit request, see what happens.
Don't actually put it in a public records act.
No,
I don't think so. No, we don't actually share it with PD. It's just for traffic engineering and kind of that kind of purpose.
Do you foresee it ever? Now I'm really fast forwarding to a future state, being pushed out to an app, so that you're driving downtown and I know I'm talking about someone looking at their phone while they're driving, so it'll be your passenger, but there's 2 spots open over there. Do you ever see it being used for something like that in the future?
So yeah, I mean, it has been in other cities. They've taken these sensors and they have an app. I've kind of moved away from an app because it's a very specific, like a dedicated app for downtown parking in Walnut Creek. Doesn't seem like it would have that much traction. It's a lot of effort for a little reward. But then for providing parking, we wouldn't provide it at the space level. It would be more maybe block or kind of general street. We don't want to give exact spaces because it gets pretty busy down here,
Yeah.
and the app may say it's available, but there's a car waiting right behind it, and then there's a uptime frequency, refresh rate, and so we wouldn't provide it space by space, but I could see something like that Park SJ map, where you could provide that block level kind of analysis, visibility for occupancy.
I'll take a look at theirs. I've never seen that one. And then my other question, and it's the bicycle parking map that prompted it. How about something similar for, I'm going to say, the traditional scooters, the Vespa type scooters and motorcycles? I've tried looking. I know we have some little spots here and there that dedicated to motorcycle / scooters. Is there anything we were thinking of doing with that, similar to the bike, where we would know where it is?
Yeah, I think I've thought of that, about adding those spaces, but I don't think I've done it. So I'll make a note, and then we can kind of include that as another option on there. That's great. Thanks.
Thanks.
I had a question. So are the parking signs illuminated at night? Are they like easy to see at night?
No. The blue ones, they're just standard signs. The blue ones may have a little bit more reflectivity than some of the purple ones, but generally it's just metal, no lights, which means it doesn't have power.
So are there like efforts to increase the visibility at night so that drivers kind of know where the parking is?
There's no efforts now, but that's something I can take note of, about doing a nighttime visibility assessment of these signs. It's another way to look at these signs. I appreciate your comment or your question about that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Patch, do you have questions?
I don't have any questions at this time.
I just had one or two. Are the bike parking space styles, are they uniform, or do we have a plethora of different styles for bike parking?
Yeah, they're probably similar to this map here with the signs.
Okay.
There has been the new installs, the new bike racks we do, they're more of an arch.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm told that we got these from Recycle Smart. I think it's like recycled materials, and so I don't think we pay much for them. But we have different types.
Okay. And then I'm curious, with the real-time occupancy, with the meters, and this is sort of, we're talking about the pucks and whether PD has those. Does the parking enforcement, so the parking enforcement officers do not have access to the puck data to know how long a car has been parked there? Do the parking meters have access directly to the parking enforcement, so they can look at an app and know that there's a violation 2 blocks away?
Well, they can check Park Mobile. I think they can see if it's been paid on Park Mobile.
Let me put it this way. Our parking enforcement, because I've asked them about this before. So first of all, the parking sensors are not connected in any way to the parking meters.
Okay.
Period. Parking enforcement does not access any of the parking sensor data whatsoever. And in speaking with parking enforcement directly, they don't look things up on Park Mobile to go target and find somebody who may be out of, like they've run out of time or something like that. Mm-hmm. Because they follow a route. They have a specific route that they drive every day, the multiple times per day during those meter hours. And that is how they either, give a issue a parking citation, or they don't. And it's just purely based on pretty much, circumstance. You happen to run out of time on your meter and they happen to be driving by on that specific route. So they're not utilizing data in any kind of way to target any kind of citation giving.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, at this time, I'll open the item up for public comment. Do we have any members of the public wishing to provide comment?
No.
No. Okay. At this time, I'll open it up for commissioner comments. Are there any commissioner comments left to right?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for this. I love how you're incorporating technology and thinking about years to come and uniform signage. Such a simple concept, and I'm actually really impressed that you know how many parking signs are out there. And I know that sounds like, why wouldn't you? But there's probably a lot of cities of similar or even smaller size that don't. And like, that's actually just an important thing. And like, it just shows that you're running an efficient program here. My one big comment was regarding particularly the leisure center garage and flowing people in, particularly on, what is that, Locust? You get a backup, particularly also related to the leisure center and like a performance time. And it like causes that left turn from Civic, and it causes like a backup. So if things could be done, and I know this might go to the operator too, but you got to get people moving in there a little bit easier into the process, and that'll help. And it'll also just make people more comfortable of going into the parking garage in general. And I think there are ways to embrace technology to speed that up as well.
Go ahead.
Great work. Thank you for this comprehensive report. My comments kind of came out in my questions. I just think looking at the ease of the payment process of the garage and making that more accessible and approachable for people would be great. Thank you for everything.
No comment. Any comment?
Thank you so much for your work. I know parking's like really difficult to find downtown, so it's nice to see like sign locations being optimized, and I'm especially like looking forward to the monument sign for digital parking availability. And so I'm just like looking forward to seeing improvements and making downtown more accessible and like easy to navigate. So thank you.
Commissioner Patch?
Thank you for this presentation. Really cool to see that you're looking at the signs. My only comment is I would love to see signs in the future that show people to accessible parking spots, especially given Walnut Creek's population. We have a fair amount of people who probably need those accessible spots. So if we could highlight those in any of your updated signage, that would be a really innovative solution for the city.
Thank you. Actually, the accessible spots, that was the thing that really struck me, are the blue signs that you're now using. I was like, oh, this is great. Before you said it, I said, this is great. This is going to show us people that need an accessible space. It's going to show where those are. So I would urge you, yes, I would urge you to use a different color than blue, because that means, to me at least, that means that that's an accessible spot, or it's directing me to an accessible spot. And then just a comment on or question on the presentation. It would be awesome when you show a graph like that you did. Even with my reading glasses and looking really close, I couldn't read anything on the graph. And it would be really helpful if you could enlarge the fonts so those of us that have sight issues can actually see the information. It looked like great information, and I wish I could have enjoyed it more, but I couldn't read it. And then with regards to the accessible parking, I walk around downtown a lot, and I don't have an accessible parking placard, so it could be that I'm just ignorant to it, but I don't notice accessible parking spaces. They don't stand out for me when I'm walking around, and I know that there are certain design elements that have to go into them, and I would encourage you to, as part of the parking program, to look at maybe some ways to uniformly install accessible parking so that those spaces are more visible and maybe even more of them. Maybe your curb management study can look at accessible parking and how it's being used. I would encourage that as well. And that's all I had, so thank you. Item F is, we move that to the beginning of the meeting? Or, no?
This is commissioner appointments.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay. Next on the agenda is an item for commission consideration, the commissioners' committee appointments. At this time, I'll open up the item for public comment. Did I miss? Yeah.
There's no members of the public.
Okay. Did I read the right one? Since there's
Yeah,
no
you're
members
okay.
here?
We just need to talk through. Do you have a copy of this? You don't have this, do you? Okay.
No.
So I'll just let me help you out here. There's 3 committees that require assignments. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
There's the mayor's bi-monthly breakfast. There's the Contra Costa Transportation Authority Citizens Advisory Committee, and then there's the Shared Mobility Working Group.
Okay, I'll take commissioner suggestions for the mayor's quarterly breakfast. Do we, I guess the question for the commission is, do we want to leave it with the chair and the vice chair?
I'd move to keep the chair and vice chair attending the quarterly breakfasts.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Sorry. I heard a second, and so, Secretary?
Yes. Commissioner Ash.
Aye.
Commissioner Krilling.
Aye.
Commissioner Patch.
Aye.
Vice Chair Cagle.
Aye.
Chair Reese.
Aye. Next, we have commissioner to sit on the Contra Costa Transportation Authority Citizens Advisory Committee. Do we have a discussion?
No discussion, but I would move to nominate Jared Ash, Commissioner Ash, as I think he is currently serving as the chair of that. And might be good to have him continue in that role.
Especially
Wouldn't
since
look good if we did something else, would it?
there's a meeting next week, yeah, so.
I'll second that.
Okay. Secretary, take the roll.
Okay. Commissioner Ash.
Yes.
Commissioner Krilling.
Yes.
Commissioner Patch.
Aye.
Commissioner Cagle.
Aye.
Commissioner Reese.
Aye. And last, we have the Shared Mobility Working Group. Do we have a discussion?
Do
we?
I have a couple of just questions. Do they ever meet? Like, I know it's
So it has not met since probably around 2020. However, since the City Council has adopted the Sustainability Action Plan and hired a sustainability coordinator, there is a lot of interest in shared mobility or shared micromobility. So, this is a standing working group that we do have. I would suggest you do assign a commissioner to this, committee, and hopefully we'll meet and make some progress.
Sure.
Can I ask the history of this, how it was formed? Was it the council that asked us to do this? Was it something that came out of this body? Is it considered an ad hoc group?
So it came from the Rethinking Mobility plan. So it wasn't an action item from that plan. I think it was formed as that plan was being put together. That's our transportation demand management or transportation strategic plan. It is a strategy that is included in that plan. It's also, which is adopted, and it's also a strategy that made its way into the sustainability action plan. So the actual working group itself, from what I know, it does consist of a commissioner and then staff.
So wait, another question there, are you looking for 2 commissioners like we have now?
I think we only have one, and it's just Rob. Right?
We had
Oh,
to, Dave.
that's right.
David.
Then yes, we are looking for 2.
So it's 2 commissioners and city staff.
That's right.
There are no other, okay.
Can I recommend that the youth advisor be invited to attend as a non-voting member as well?
I think that's fine. I think this working group has flexibility, sort of similar to what we had talked about with the traffic safety working group. So yes, that would be, if you are all interested in that.
I like that idea of having the youth commissioner participate if she's willing.
Yes.
Great. So that's 1 down.
Rob, do you want to stay or?
It's really taxing to be on this working group, but I think I could handle it.
Okay.
If there's no
And then
opposition.
I'd like to ask our 2 new members, do any of you have an interest in this one?
I was going to nominate, if she was willing, Laura Patch for this one.
I was going to nominate myself.
I'll go ahead and second that. Since you scoot around town, I think that would be great.
This one reminds me of sign subcommittee in my other commission.
Okay, so I'll make
Revise
full-
your motion.
Yeah, should I make a full formal motion that we have we appoint Commissioners Reese and Patch and include the youth commissioner as well in the meetings as a non-voting member?
Do we have a second? I'll second. Can I second as
Yes.
chair? I second then.
Okay, Commissioner Ash,
Yes.
Commissioner Crowling,
Aye.
Commissioner Patch,
Aye.
Commissioner Cagle,
Aye.
Commissioner Reese.
Aye.
So moved.
I was going to make a comment on the topic. So on the quarterly breakfast meetings, I always made myself available if someone couldn't make it when I was on my prior commission to pinch hit. And you might see me there anyway because I just enjoy those meetings, but I'd just be sitting in the back eating my breakfast and listening.
Okay. You really like that breakfast dessert, huh?
It's from what is the place it's from? Sunrise Bistro, yeah. And I just like you get to hear from all the commissions, and it's a good meeting.
Okay. You're welcome to join. At this time, I'd like to invite commissioners and staff to provide their reports on activities and/or announcements.
I have some. Okay. All right. So on May 16th, it's Bike to Wherever Day. The city will be hosting an Energizer station on North Main, right outside these windows over here. We have very exciting prizes. So come on your bicycle. And I think it's actually the same day as our next Transportation Commission meeting. So my expectation is that you arrive here by bicycle. Okay. I know.
Yeah, it's easier to walk from where I live.
I was gonna say I'll take my bike and park like a block away, and because that's a long haul from my end.
Come on, I'll go with you.
Okay. I hereby let's see, yeah. I hereby adjourn the March 21st, 2024 regular meeting of the Transportation Commission. Our next regular meeting is May 16th, 2024, and I get to do this.
He's serious.
Was that too loud?
I don't know if you can hear me. Thanks, Laura. Feel better.
Thank you. Thanks for accommodating.
Feel better, Laura.
Hope you get
Thank
better.
you. Bye.